Okay, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Fallon Thomas. I am the Vice President of the New Haven Club of the National Organization of Negro Business and Professional Women's Clubs Incorporated. Today, we are going to carry out our Safe Encounters program, and Safe Encounters means sound advice for effective encounters. And so we have some lovely guests here. I'll pass it off to Sergeant Ross to introduce herself.
Hi, everyone. My name is Sergeant Martha Ross. I'm with YPD. I've been working with YPD for almost 10 years now, and I've been in the community engagement unit probably over 4.5 years now. Sergeant Lowry.
Hi, everyone. My name is Sergeant Jarrell Lowry. I am with the New Haven Police Department. I am going on my 8th year with the department. I am currently the district manager for the Dixwell district as well as the New Hallville district.
Awesome. And now our youth representative.
Hello, I'm Kalia. I go to Metropolitan Business Academy. I'm in the 10th grade, a rising junior. And my career, I want to be a mental health practitioner or a nurse practitioner.
Oh, that is amazing. Well, thank you for taking the time to lead us in this conversation today. And a little bit about Safe Encounters. So once again, that is sound advice for effective encounters. In the view of the rising police shootings, it is essential that we help our young people learn to respond when interacting with law enforcement officials. Our organization promotes programs and activities to be initiated towards this end. The ultimate anticipated outcome is building or reestablishing good relationships between youth, minorities, and law enforcement personnel, and saving the lives of our youth and young adults. So one of the things that the National Association holds is to engage with our community and uplift our community and create a better environment for us all. So I'm so happy to have two experts here that can talk about that engagement. So I would like to pose the first question. Can you talk about your experience with community policing and what it means to you and how you engage with the community?
Thank you for having me, Fallon. Yeah, so community engagement to me is really important, right? So when I started this role, the purpose was to bridge the gap between the police and the New Haven and the Yale community, right? So how do we do that? How do we go about that? The best way to do that is to build relationships, talking to people, holding events, people constantly seeing you over and over and over when it's not a negative situation, right? So whether I'm going into one of the schools and talking about social media safety or bullying, or if I'm at the local food pantry and we're giving out meals or we're taking meals to people in the community that need those meals, it's important to me to have a relationship in the community that I work with. So in order to do that, we have to build trust. And in order to build trust, there has to be consistency.
That's a great answer. And I have seen you everywhere as someone who is everywhere in the community. And I would say, your warm and welcoming presence would definitely allow me to reach out if I knew something was wrong, because we have that relationship and you've built that. And I've seen that with other people, not just me because we're colleagues, but your interactions in the community speak for itself. Lieutenant Lowry, Sergeant Lowry, anything you want to add to that?
Yeah, thank you for promoting me. No, it's great. Again, I agree with Sergeant Ross. Community engagement is a big part of what we do. Community policing, it works. It works between the walking beats. As a walking beat officer, you get a chance to know your community. You get a chance to know who lives in your community. You don't get that same interaction driving a patrol vehicle. It takes getting out of your cruiser and talking to people, or if you're on foot, stopping and talking to the neighborhood. That's how you learn what's going on in the neighborhoods. That's how you get to know people by their first name. There's nothing more personal than an officer knowing people by their first name in the neighborhood that they work in. That shows a strong relationship, and it also shows strong community policing ties. So I definitely agree with what Sergeant Ross said. And community policing is very, very key in our industry.
Thank you. Kalia, you would like to ask the next question?
Okay. My question is, when I use a color account for like police officers related to like the protest of being pulled over, how should we like engage or respond, or like what should we keep in mind to like do in order to respect the police, like to have a good interaction? Anything?
Okay, so I'm going to answer this question. So the first thing is, so we'll just use a motor vehicle stop for our example here. Very important. If you, let's say you were to get pulled over by the police, very important. The first thing you want to do as a youth of color is you want to be polite and respectful and courteous. Polite, respectful, and courteous goes a long way in your interactions with police officers, and not even just with police officers, but just with people in general. Because I want you to remember one thing: a negative attitude can completely alter the tone of your encounter with a police officer. If the police officer approaches you in a respectful manner, then that police officer deserves that same respect back and that same tone back. No negativity. Try to eliminate any hostility and keep it courteous, keep it polite. The next thing I would say is to follow the instructions that are given to you by the officer, whether it's keep your hands where I can see them. It's not because we're being mean, but it's, again, it's a part of our training. The police officer wants to go home just like the driver of the car wants to go home. So if the police officer asks you for your license, if the police officer asks you for your registration, just follow the instructions that are given to you. But on the other side of that, I want you to also keep in mind too, that you are free to ask questions. So feel free to ask questions. For instance, if you were pulled over, you can ask the officer. If the officer didn't tell you right away, excuse me, officer, but why was I pulled over? You're allowed that right, and you have that right. So remember that you do have that right. And the last thing I want to mention is keep in mind that we as police officers have a job like anybody else. Just like a lot of you go to work, we go to work every day, and we have things that we have to do. We have rules and regulations we have to follow. But the bottom line is we have a job to do. And part of our job is sometimes things that we don't necessarily want to do. We don't always want to go out there and stop cars, but it's a part of our job. But the biggest thing I wanted you to take away from this is if that police officer treats you with respect, whether it's during a protest, whether it's during a motor vehicle stop, that officer deserves the same exact respect back, and that officer expects that in return.
Yeah, that's the point I was trying to like give him the question. And it's like, I agree with you really, really well. So it really is the set of the tone that portrays how the whole situation works out.
Right, right. Very good.
And then we have our next question. Kalia, do you have that question?
No.
Okay. To build positive relationship with youth and police officers, what are some strategies that will be helpful? And I believe, Kalia, you came up with that question yourself.
Yeah, I forgot about that one.
That's a really great question. And I'm going to kind of echo what I was saying earlier, right? So communication, consistency, and trust. That is what I have learned throughout the years in community policing. Consistency, building relationships, trust, going out, and kind of what Sergeant Laurie was saying, like a lot of what we do sometimes is in a car, right? But getting out that car and talking to the people in the community, that starts to have them recognize us, right? And have us now exchange names. And now consistently, they start to see us all the time. Now we're waving, now we're stopping and we're talking for a bit. Now we're asking about each other's families. So as the youth, you can do the same thing too. If you see me walking on the street, say, hey, what's up, Sergeant Ross? How you doing today? And I'll do that when I walk by people. If they'll just have like a straight face, I'm like, how you doing today? And a lot of times they're surprised because they don't expect me to be like so chipper or be like, hey, how you doing? They're like, oh, I'm good. So it like at the end of the day, we're all human, right? And we all have hearts and we all have feelings and we all want to be respected. And when we exchange that kind of same energy, then we start to build those relationships. For the youth, what I would suggest a lot of times, like myself, and I know Sergeant Lowry as well, is there's a lot of different programs that we participate in throughout the year. For example, the turkey drive, right? When we first started the turkey drive around 7 or 8 years ago, it started with 100 turkeys is what we handed out. This past year, we handed out almost 2,000 turkeys. That fed thousands of families. And that has developed over the years because we've built relationships, not just with businesses or the university or the PDs, but with the community. A lot of the community participate in this. Most of our volunteers at the turkey drive are students. I would say at least 50% of our volunteers at the turkey drive are students. And that's because a lot of times they see what we're going out there and we're doing. Like I'm one of the conditioning coaches over at Wilbur Cross for cheer, right? So I work with the girls and they see a lot of what I do over there as well. So it's showing up and consistency, showing up, consistency. All of that starts to develop trust. And Fallon, I'm sure you can see it, from the relationship, that we've built. It's because you constantly see me throughout the days, the weeks, the years, and now you tell someone else, hey, I know Martha can, does this, and Sergeant Lowry does this. Why don't we come together? I always say that we're stronger in numbers, right? When we work together and we come together, there's nothing that we can't accomplish. And that's why it's so important to build those relationships with the youth, the community, and the police.
And that's so true. And the New Haven Club, we were right there with you at the last turkey drive, as a, sponsor, and also there with our club sisters and our youth passing out the turkey. So, not only are we calling on you all to do your job, but supporting you in doing that job and making sure that we're bringing awareness to all of the things that you're doing in our community to help support those relationships. So to our next question, in your efforts to improve the outcomes of community policing, specifically amongst youth, can you share how your department is leading by example while incorporating partnerships directly with youth through technical assistance and youth engagement?
Sure. So I'll answer this one. So the New Haven Police Department, we try to cater as much as we can to the youth. Again, we're heavy on community policing. So what does that tie in? That's not just adults, that's including our youth, because the youth are our future. So we definitely try to cater to our youth through a number of ways. So the first way is through our social media. We have a Instagram account. We have a Facebook account. I believe we even have a Twitter account. We try to stay active on our social media because that's, again, how we engage a lot of the young people. As you know, social media is a very big thing now in society. So it's called changing with the times. We've, as a department, we've grown. Our department is a lot younger than it has been in previous years. We have a lot of young officers. We have a lot of young supervisors. So we have to come into the 21st century. We have to engage our youth because, again, they're our future. So we engage them through social media. We also have a PAL program. Our PAL program is our Police Athletic League. So we have a summer camp that is run by our PAL program. We also have after school programs. We have a martial arts program. All of these fall under the PAL umbrella. We have a sergeant and a lieutenant that run the PAL program, and there's officers that work with the PAL program. And there's youth in there, I believe that starting age is 8 years old up until teenage years. So it starts building that gap and bridging that gap between police officers and youth, starting with the PAL program. So that's a great tool that we use to help us in our bridging the gap between police officers and youth. The other way we bridge the gap in between police and youth is through our school resource officers, also known as SROs. Those are the police officers that work in some of our high schools and some of our middle schools. They are the closest to our youth because they work directly with them in the schools. So not only are they, and they're not there to arrest them, they're there to mediate situations. They're there to give them peer mediation. They're there to be counselors. They're everything. Our SROs do a ton of things outside of normal police work. And then the last thing that we do to engage our youth is we visit the schools. So I personally have been to a number of schools since I've been district manager. And basically what we do is we either go to the younger children, we read books to them. If they're the older students, we go and talk to them about safety or courage or whatever it is they want to talk about. And it's all to help engage the police and the youth in our society. And also our chiefs do it as well. They go and visit schools, and we just basically want our youth to know that just like you, we're people too.
That is awesome. And as a follow-up, what are some ways that youth organizations and community organizations can help to bridge the gap?
Okay, to that end, I would say one of the biggest things they can do is to have more police involvement in the organization. So for instance, we have a community event called Coffee with a Cop. So a lot of our youth obviously don't drink coffee, but the purpose of that is so that you can sit down with an officer, and it doesn't have to be about anything bad. One thing about our profession is usually when the police show up, it's not for a good reason. Typically people call the police because they need help, and usually it's not for anything good. But in a Coffee with a Cop setting, you're sitting down with an officer and you can now have a personal one-on-one conversation with an officer. So I think something like that, but involving youth, would be beneficial. So maybe even pizza with a cop, sit down, have a slice of pizza with an officer, talk to an officer, tell them your hobbies. What are you into? The officer can tell you what they're into. I think things like that is what organizations can do to help bridge that gap between young people and police officers.
And I would also suggest another model that I've seen. It's a walk. So I know in the Dixville community, there's the Canal Trail. So, a walk with a cop, maybe to answer questions that people may have about safety. That has been working for the health field. There's, programs where there's walks with doctors or practitioners, and they on that walk are able to answer, questions around any health issues. So that's a good model that probably could be used as well for the police.
Yes, that's great. That's a great idea. Mm-hmm.
That is a really great idea, Fallon.
Kalia, your next question.
Given that some of our club sisters and parents of the youth will be headed to college this upcoming fall, what advice can you share to us to how to be safe on campuses and what to be aware of? Basically, the things to look out for if you go out of state or even if you stay here.
That's a great question. So there's a few things that you want to look out for. The first one is the majority of universities, state universities, private universities, you're going to see blue phones, and you'll see them around here in New Haven. So those blue phones, when you press that button, there's like a big red button on it. It says like emergency, or you could even talk to dispatch through there when it's not an emergency. So knowing where those blue phones are, right? Knowing the public safety at the university or college that you're going to, right? So for example, Yale, our public safety includes security and police officers. So sometimes I know people get a little confused. They're like, are you a security guard or are you a police officer? So some universities have police officers and security. Some universities only have security, and they call that town police for any emergencies. So knowing the difference between those two, and if the university does have a police department, knowing their non-emergency number as well. A lot of times when I do safety talks for the incoming students, I'll have them pull out their phones and say, hey, this is what our number is. Just save it in your phone. And believe it or not, we've had a few students call the non-emergency number saying, oh, it was saved in my phone from orientation, right? And you won't even think about that. The other thing is there's an app called Live Safe, and that's throughout the universities in the country as well. So that's a really great app as well, because what that app is going to do is it's going to allow you to communicate with the police and public safety directly through that app. So let's say you're someplace and you don't feel safe and you can't pick up the phone, right? You can take your phone and you can, text the Live Safe app saying, hey, I'm here, I don't feel comfortable, I can't say anything. And we've gotten those too. And also, if you see something that's not supposed to be happening, you can just text Live Safe anonymously. You don't have to say who you are if you don't even want to get involved with it. But if you see something, you know, you want to say something about it, because you want to make sure that you're not only worrying about your safety, but the safety of the people around you. Being aware of your surroundings, you know, that's a big thing when I give the safety talks as well. A lot of times when you're walking around, what do you see? You see people like this when they're walking, right? And you know, their face is in their phone. You don't want to do that. You want to make sure that you're aware of your surroundings, looking about, if you can walk in pairs, you know, make sure that you're not walking alone. The majority of the universities around the country, and I know Yale does, is, you know, kind of similar to what Fallon said, is a security guard will walk you to your office or your dorm. If you don't feel safe, you can call public safety and say, hey, I have to walk from this dorm to this dorm. I don't feel safe walking by myself. A lot of time they have escorts, and that, you know, those security escorts will walk you from point A to point B. So those are just a few of the many things you can do to make sure that you're feeling safe. But above all, always know that you can call 911. Knowing how to communicate with the public safety at the university, and being able to have that knowledge with you if anything shall happen or would happen.
Do you mind sharing the phone number you discussed so like the people can have it?
So for Yale's non-emergency number is 203-432-4400. That's our non-emergency number. Obviously, if it's an emergency, just dial 911. Another thing to have is the Live Safe app. And that's going to be not just here at Yale, but universities around the country. So if you're going to another, like, for example, my son goes to West Virginia University and they have that as well, right? So he can download that app and, you know, contact public safety or whatever it may be. So knowing that app as well, downloading it on your phone, paying attention during those orientation meetings. I know sometimes when students go in, they're so overwhelmed with all these different things, but pay attention to what those safety briefings entail, because a lot of times you may get some information from that later on is going to help you, because they're going to know best based on whatever university or college you're going to be at, what to keep in mind or be aware of based on where you're at.
Thank you. And I know that is very important. I remember when I was in college, they basically told us like the blocks to stay within. And I really feel like I stayed within those blocks all 4 years, ventured out a little bit, but definitely was being sure and safe to do that. Well, that concludes the questions that we have. This has been a very fruitful conversation for you to provide information around safe encounters. We heard things as far as, you know, being engaged with your community officers, having officers be present in our communities, getting to know them and who they are, the types of activities that are led by law enforcement in the communities and how to get involved, and then tips for being safe and being aware of our surroundings, and then how to be courteous and polite when engaging with officers, whether it's on a routine stop or during a peaceful protest. So these are very good tips for us, and we appreciate you, Sergeant Ross and Sergeant Lowry, and we look forward to engaging with you in the future. We look forward to seeing you at the next upcoming event. We hope to see you on Juneteenth in New Horville, and thank you so much for joining us. And thank you to our club sisters who are present here today. Thank you to our youth support, Kalia. Thank you for rushing here right after school. I'm pretty sure you have homework to do with a couple of weeks left, but this concludes our programming. If anyone is interested in what we do here at the New Haven Club, you can email membership@thenewhavenclub.org. Thank you and have a great afternoon.
Take care, everybody.